So we will go ahead and get the second portion started, third conversation for today. And again, I just am thankful for so many of you here this afternoon. I was talking about 30 minutes. We'll say after we'll jump into the adoption conversation about the parent symposium today. And we're really excited to have Choice Network here helping us coordinate this. And let's acknowledge we've got some young folks with us in this space today as well. So what I generally will spend the time to sort of give a little brief overview of what session has been and what we're going to be going into. And I think we've heard already about the journey to parenthood, fostering, the possibility of what it looks like through assisted reproductive sort of assistance. And then now thinking about what the adoption pathway looks like. And I think much like what we've heard already, I think some of the themes hopefully will probably stay consistent in terms of being thoughtful and intentional in the process, but also take your time to be considerate. And I think with having families present with us, we'll have a little time to talk about what that looks like for them in personal contact. I'm here to assist and guide as I can, but we've got folks here who can help lead the conversation. And then as you can see behind us, we've got some virtual guests with us. I guess from across the country. We have guests from across the country. And we'll take a moment to also have them introduce themselves. Technology, bear with us as we try to make sure that the sound isn't reverberating too much. There may be some moments of unmuting. Folks, for those who are joining us virtually, please do try to keep your microphones muted as you can. And maybe we'll start with Molly, say who she is and when jump into the rest of her.
So my name is Molly and I am the founder of Choice Network. So happy to be here today. We're a partner of Stonewall's proud partner. Today we also have Ryan with Gays with Kids here with us and Paige with Love Grown Adoption Consulting, and then two of our families. So just excited for them to be here and tell their story. I have a Canva all ready to go. I mean, I'm just making this way more, what were we calling it? Instead of conversation, it was more presentation. Yeah. So we're going to skip all of that. But I wanted to be a space for you guys to just ask all of your questions. I will say that I think that adoption right now in this moment, it's important to have a team of people that you trust. We're working now in a post-Roe movement. And so I was talking to Dental about the importance of, adoption right now. Prior to the pandemic, we were hearing stats of 36 waiting couples for every one baby available for adoption. We're hearing now it's closer to 100 waiting couples for every one baby available for adoption. And what's really important, we want it to be really widely known that we don't support the narrative that because women can't access abortion, there's going to be all these babies available for adoption. In fact, the research shows that when turned away from abortion, only about 9% of pregnant people will choose adoption. So I say that to say, when you're talking to adoption agencies and they look like they're recruiting a bunch of families to be prepared for this big wave of birth lumps, please know that it's just not what the research is showing is going to be true. So coming here to talk with you guys, Choice Network and many agencies, actually my intern was doing a check on all HRC approved Ohio adoption agencies to see who was accepting families right now, because Choice Network actually is not. We're on a hold for families, but we hope to open back up in 2023. But as we have gone on a hold, we still have tons of families. As a leader in LGBTQ adoption, we have tons of families reaching out to us. Literally, I get at least 2 to 3 emails every day with families hoping to work with us. So we have realized that there's other ways, there's other ways to do adoption. And that's by building a team of trusted people. So that's why we have Brian and Paige here today. I was just going to tell just a couple quick things, with the same with foster care, you have to have a home setting in order to adopt. So these are most agencies that you talk to are going to be doing infant adoption, but my agency can approve you to do kids legally available in the foster care system to adopt to. So there's home study, Usually the average wait time you're hearing is around 2 years. That is our average now too. It used to be closer to 6 to 9 months. And the families who are going to talk with you today are going to tell you they were matched pretty quickly. So our wait time is a little longer. And then the average cost for adoption nationwide is around $25,000. So we sort of fall in, where foster care is very low to no cost. Adoption is in the middle, and then assisted reproductive ART is normally found on the other end of that. And then also just that, I created this agency in order to center pregnant people. We start doing that by offering all options first, and then from there creating adoption plans that center them. So also just when you're talking about teams with people, that centering the birth parent is the most important conversation. It's the same as foster care, just loving that mom so deeply. That's the only way to do adoption right too. So we stand in partnership with these partners who are nationwide, who also support the same values that we do. So I'm going to Choice Network, though. I will say that although we are not accepting families, we can do home studies for families. So we could be in that safe place for you to be sort of your home agency. We're going to do your home study and your close place of visits, all the things that are required legally for you to adopt. But then you would be doing other pieces of it in partnership with our partners. So we're going to start with Brian with Gays with Kids. Brian just launched Gays with Kids just launched Gays with Kids Academy, which is a space where families can actually learn about all of their options to building family, but also we talk a little bit more about adoption today.
Thank you, Molly. It's great to be here. Thanks, Denzel. And hi, Paige. It's good to see you. So I just thought I'd just give a brief background on me and Gays with Kids, and then go into a little bit more details on GWK Academy. My husband and I created our family through a combination of adoption and surrogacy. We did this a long time ago. Our oldest now, we found out it was about him when he was 3 days old, and we took him home from the hospital 2 days later. He's now 13 in the 8th grade. And then Levi has twin sisters, Ella and Sadie, born through surrogacy. They are 17 months younger than him. They're going to be 12 on Wednesday, and they're in the 6th grade. I like to tell folks that I'm the biological parent, and the reason I do that is because I'm also HIV positive. I have been for more than 30 years. My husband and I are together 29 years. And it just so happened that his little guys didn't swim properly and mine did. So what I'd say is when we were becoming dads, whether it was the adoption journey or the surrogacy journey, there wasn't a single time throughout that journey that either of us felt like we knew what was going on, that either of us felt like in control, that we were in control of what was going on and we knew what was going to happen next, etc. And so one of the things that I hope to do after becoming a dad was to be able to share my experiences with others. And that eventually led to the birth of Gays with Kids 8.5 years ago now. And what we did is we told stories, and we told lots and lots of stories over the years, probably by now 2,000, 3,000 stories between our blog website rather and social media, etc. But what we did during that time, what I realized is that we inspired a ton of people. And I know that because people have been telling us all the time, thank you so much for inspiring us. And finally, about 2 years ago, 1.5, 2 years ago, I was talking to someone on Facebook Messenger, and he said, you have inspired me so much. Thank you. And would you mind doing a video chat? And I said, sure, of course. So we're talking. And then I said, so tell me, what are you going to do now? And he's like, I don't know, I guess I'll have to wing it. And I had one of those, oh my God, I haven't helped anyone become a dad. I've inspired a few, and I don't mean to minimize that, but I haven't taken what I learned to make anyone else's life easier. And so that was really how we started to think about what became GWK Academy. And as I said, over the years, we told lots and lots of stories. And so I got to meet some of those who were really involved in helping LGBTQ plus folks create families. And you're looking at one of my mentors right now in the adoption space. That's Molly. She is our adoption mentor, and I go to her with anything adoption related. And we have similar relationships in surrogacy and IVF and foster care. And so what we did with GWK Academy, which we just launched in February, and we've had over 70 enrollees so far, is I say, okay, step one, I want to make sure you understand what all your options are to parenthood. How long each option will take, how much it'll cost, and the different family building partners you'll need. And then once you figure out which path is best for your family, we'll ask you to enroll in either our surrogacy and IVF guide or our adoption/foster adopt guide. I really believe that if you go into the journey being fully educated and understanding everything that you need to know about your journey that you're about to undertake, will make your journey much better than mine. And my goal is that nobody that I work with feels at any given time they have no idea what's going on, they have no control, they don't really understand how long it's going to take or who they have to work with, etc. And so that's what we launched GWK Academy for. And anyone who is looking to start their journey, we welcome to work with you.
Thank you, Brian.
Thank you.
Then we also have Paige here with Love Grown Adoption Consulting. When Choice Network went on a wait list, we started to refer to Paige, who was highly vetted through Gays with Kids. Paige is not a facilitator, but she is a consultant. So I'm going to let her tell some of the great things that she did.
Yeah, hi, thanks for joining today. And nice to see you all. It's nice to get together. I started Love Growing Adoption Consulting. So a consultant is kind of someone who walks you through the adoption process. Same. I can relate to everything that Brian said of just not knowing how to navigate this, feeling fire hose with tons of information and overloaded. And I learned a lot of things the hard way. So I'm an adoptive mom of two, ages 7 and 3, and I started doing the consulting thing about 3 years ago for lots of reasons, but I did want to start something that was, of course, served all families. And that's also, you'll see that as the funding that I do donate a ton of money to organizations, and I will only pump that into organizations that support all families pursuing adoption. I have partnered with Creating a Family for some of my education curriculum. If you can't tell, that is my jam. And so I have guest speakers twice a month. They're often adoptees or birth parents live, and then I record all of those. I have a curriculum I've built as well. And then my area, though, of specialization is domestic infant adoption. However, same as Brian, right, I will talk about foster care. I mentor foster youth in Wisconsin. And I will kind of talk about other routes, but my area, right, again, is going to be more that domestic infant adoption route. And then I do have relationships with agencies and attorneys across the United States that I connect families with, and providing, basically trying to get, their profile book seen as much as possible to hopefully be chosen by an expecting parent. I do work across the United States. I'm based in Wisconsin, and that's where my education really comes from too. If you Google my name, there's hundreds of articles, podcast interviews, radio interviews. I've done presentations for like American Family Insurance for National Adoption Awareness Month. That's really where my passion lies, obviously, is the education. I have helped over now 70 families grow via adoption, about 10 in addition to that, 10 from foster care, because depending on what state you live in, you can hold licenses in both. And I've been doing this for, like I said, 3 years. I do work full time. I work for a financial institution. I do platform education training, and that's where my curriculum building and teaching adults kind of comes from. And then I've done advocacy work too. So my undergrad's in political science. I went through 70 extra hours of training through the state of Wisconsin to do advocacy work, which that was kind of like hitting my head against a brick wall. I'm not gonna lie, but it's very important work, but that's also what somewhat led me into starting this consulting business too. Is like Brian, I was just, if I could help one family with some of the things, again, that I learned the hard way, great. And it's, pun intended, grown way more than I ever anticipated. But yes, that's a little bit about me. Definitely please check out my website. I have a lot of great free education videos with birth parents and adoptees, because I think their voices are so important in this. And there are tons of like FAQ documents and again, just resources that might be helpful. And then Instagram is where I do a ton of my stuff. So there's a ton of, I'll share again, other voices and things that I think are important for you to see. That's a little bit about me.
Awesome. Thank you, Paige. So I think that the one thing I just want to make sure is known is like, if you're looking for an agency, Gays with Kids has partners that they trust that are just like really highly vetted agencies, but also HRC has a list of agencies too. So that, and then just like Paige was saying, the difference between her is that she's going to be families will come to her home study approved, and then what she's going to do is work as sort of, it's more of an independent route that you would be taking, where she's going to help you match with birth mothers, so connect you with attorneys that might be looking for families, things like that. So just two sort of creative ways to find ways to build your team.
So
And now
Molly,
I'm going to have our two families. We'll go ahead and let Craig start since he's joining us from Vermont today. But he is here a Columbus native, and I think deeply involved in Stonewall, I believe, as well. So I'm just so happy you're here today. Maybe could you tell us a little bit about your story?
Yeah, thank you for having me. And yeah, I'm up in Vermont for the weekend enjoying the fall leaves. So apologies if my reception is a little spotty. But my name's Craig Diaz. I use he, him pronouns. I'm the Senior Director of Development for Equitas Health in Columbus. And thanks to the Choice Network, I am also a father of a 5-year-old girl named Isabella, my daughter. So my fellow co-parent and I, Joel, we adopted Isabella from a birth mother up in Michigan that we were matched with about 13 weeks into our pregnancy. And so we actually met Charlotte, Izzy's biological mother, at her first OBGYN appointment up in Michigan. And from that point on, we were matched with her. And it was actually an amazing experience. And we were matched early in the pregnancy, so it gave us time to build this relationship with Charlotte. We would go up and visit her and her mother and her family throughout the course of her pregnancy. And it was a wonderful opportunity to ask questions and make sure everybody felt comfortable on both sides of the adoption process. And so we got the call one day that Charlotte was going into labor, or that she was going to be induced early, and we drove up to Michigan. We were there in the delivery room with her and her mother when she did give birth. And from that point on, we have had Isabella in our lives. We were able to take her home from the hospital. And it was actually a nice experience too, because we were right by Charlotte the entire time. So after Izzy was born, we had to stay in the hospital for a few days. Charlotte was in the room next to us, and we were having Izzy go back and forth throughout the process. So Charlotte could spend some time with her, we could spend some time with her. And then we stayed in Michigan for a week because of the laws in Michigan on the adoption process and getting all the paperwork finalized in Ohio. Then we drove home, and from that point on, we've had an open adoption where we have communication with Charlotte. Prior to the pandemic, we were going up once or twice a year to visit her in Michigan. In the pandemic, we were, of course, staying in touch, and we have plans to visit Charlotte now that we're on the tail end of the COVID-19 pandemic. But it's been an incredible experience. I think we are very fortunate and lucky to have the dynamic we have with our birth mother. Molly has shared that that's not always the case, and our circumstance is, I don't want to say rare, but not something you find every day, where we have such a great relationship with the biological mother. And that's been great for us. It's been great for Izzy. And we just feel very fortunate. Isabella is 5 now. She loves dinosaurs and all the Disney princesses. I feel like Disney Plus helped raise my child in the pandemic. So it got us through some of the tough days. But she's just a smart, assertive, amazing little girl. And we're just excited for all the years ahead as Joel and I as parents. So that's a little bit about us.
Thank you, Craig. And then we have another family here to tell their story too. So I can't tell us.
So I guess we would say stories, because we have 2 adoptions and 2 very different stories. Kieran, this is Kieran. When we were on our adoption journey, we were matched, and it fell through. That would have been around April of 2019. We had been matched with her for about 4 months, and we were ready, and she had did a gender reveal for us, so it was a boy, and we had a shower, and we had everything. And then it fell through, as does happen. And I know there's that cliche of like everything happens for a reason, and when you're in like the depths of sorrow, it's just like, oh, dude, let's say that. But fast forward to May 25th, we got a call. It was Labor Day week or Memorial Day weekend. We were just like in our jammies, sitting on our couch on a Saturday night, and we get a call, and it's like, hey, there's a birth mom in Florida going into labor right now. Can you be in Florida tomorrow? And we were like, yeah, this feels right. Let's go. Almost no information. They said she found out very late, and she had maybe had one prenatal appointment. We didn't know race, gender, we didn't care. None of that mattered. Just kind of felt right. We hopped on a plane the next day. We're in Florida, and he was born very healthy. We got to leave the hospital 2 days later. At the time, his birth mother didn't want an open adoption, which we had hoped for. But when we were in the hospital with him, she was in the hospital too, in a different space. And right before she discharged, she changed her mind and she wanted to meet us. So we met her, and we stayed in contact with her for about the first 20 months of his life, and then we lost contact. We know her name, we know where she lived at the time, she knows our names. We are always open to her coming back in our lives. We occasionally email her pictures and say like, hey, we're here. If you're ready, we're here. So we stayed in Florida for about 10 days, as are the laws. They have to Florida has to tell Columbus that we want to bring a baby home. Columbus has to tell Florida, okay, great. And Florida tells us, okay, you can leave now. We flew home when he was about 10 days old, his first flight on an airplane, and then we decided to adopt again mid-pandemic, and we said like, oh, we better get back on the list really quick. It could take forever. 5 months later, Kamari was born, so we waited a very short 5 months. That is not typical. And her birth family is a big part of our lives. We have an incredibly open relationship, not only with her birth mom, but with her whole birth family. We go to their house, they come to our house. We met her parent, like her birth mom's parents. So Kamari's birth grandparents, we met their whole extended families. We have pictures with them. They send gifts on birthdays and Christmas. I mean, it's incredible. In fact, I need to text her birth mother back because she wants to visit in the next couple of days while she's home from school. And so they are a big part of our lives. And of course, they wrapped Kieran in love as well. They bring him gifts. He calls her birth grandma Julie as well. They both call her birth Aunt Rowan. So it's and their family, her birth mother was adopted. So their family is very well versed in the adoption world as well. And yeah, it's just been a really, I mean, I don't think we can come up with any words other than magical. And of course, Molly and her team we thank her regularly for building our family. And because, we are firm believers that you end up with the kids that you were supposed to have, whether that be through natural birth or surrogacy or adoption, you will end up with the kids that you're supposed to have. So.
Well, I love having these two families tell their stories because they tell such beautiful stories. And really that, I think the national stat is 85% of pregnant people will open adoption, but ours truly is 100%. Just like Kieran's story, many times, moms will say, I want a close adoption, but it almost goes without fail that once they deliver, they want adoption. So Just like really, if you're choosing adoption, really just, focusing so much of your time on an education on how to be in community with a birth mom is just like a really great space for you to be. So now, I would love to open up for question and answers. We have, Paige, we lost Paige.
It's been wrong.
It's okay. But Brian's here still, so, she's back. Paige, we're just doing question and answer now. Brian, did you have something?
Yeah, I just want to say something about HRCs. You're right, thank you for mentioning that we obviously have a network of agencies that we can refer across the nation. And if we don't have one, where you live, we'll find one, either one that works nationally, someone like Molly, or another organization within your realm. And while we always do look to HRC, I can tell you, not every agency that is LGBTQ competent and really interested in working with us is necessarily a part of HRC's list. That being, and so there are other ways in which we can help you find an agency. But it is critically important that you do work with an agency where someone like Molly is as passionate about helping LGBTQ family building as I am, and I know as Paige is, because if you don't, I've talked to a couple of folks through GWK Academy who didn't understand that they had to do research, and they've been lingering. It's been over 2 years and nothing's going on. And each time it turns out they didn't do the research in their agency, and their agencies were not at all interested in working with the LGBTQ community.
Yeah, I would say, no, you can just jump. I would say, there's a huge Christian-based agency that was recently a part of a lawsuit. And in that lawsuit, they ended up having to work with all families. So essentially, they were doing foster care licenses for the state of Michigan, and 2 lesbian couples sued them because they refused to do their home study and they were trying to do kinship foster placement. So because they were sued, now they have to open up to all families. And I worry so deeply for our families that it's, an avenue for them to be taken advantage of, especially in this moment. So I think that, Brian actually quotes me. I say, make sure that you see the agency and your team of people screaming it from the mountaintops, checking their Instagram, checking, their website, any marketing materials they might have, making sure you see families that look like you on their site, and making sure that they're centering moms too. So so thank you for that, Brian. What question?
So that was actually going to be the first question, sort of, and sort of highlighting that we've got people maybe not residing and living in different states. Practice just visiting Vermont. We'll come back. But we've got Ryan in New York, David and Paige in Wisconsin, and we're here in Ohio, and there are going to be people who likely watch this from wherever they are. But where do you start the process? Right, each state is different. You don't just wake up one day and say, okay, let's maybe think about this adoption process. But where do you start? Who do you call first? Is it different in each state? Do we start with you?
Yeah, I think that starting with, I know Brian said there's other, I believe that too, but I think HRC's list is a really great place to start. Choice Network too, always coming to me as well. I'm happy to help families. Brian also with the Gays and Kids Academy, they'll help families walk through, getting to the finish line essentially with building their family. So I think I always say HRC because you have to do a lot to get qualified by them to have their seal of approval. So we have the innovative level seal of approval, which is the highest level seal you can achieve. And I just feel like if you're gonna, walk the walk, you need to be showing it and doing the work to make sure that families know you're safe for them to come to. So I think those are good places, but you can add.
We also, we did Adoption Academy through Nationwide Children's Hospital before we even picked an agency. We started with Adoption Academy, and it's like an 6 or 8 week course where you go to Children's Hospital and they do every week it's basically like telling you everything you don't know that you don't know. Because there's a lot. They talk about money, they talk about domestic versus international, but international is not really an option for gay families unless I think there's maybe the UK and
2 countries.
There's
2 countries, Colombia and South Africa.
Okay. So, but anyway, we did this adoption academy and it kind of taught us the things that we didn't know. And then we went to one other agency and it was just kind of, I mean, they told us that we were really welcome and all this stuff, but then the way that we kind of talked, and then when we saw Molly and we walked out the door, and we're like, there, that's it. We're done. We found our place. So
I think you put that in the foster care, discussion too. They just talk about how it's important, the person, the assessor that's working with, to have a relationship with that. And I think, we try hard to really get to know our families so that we can make really good matches.
I would also add, just briefly, finding somebody that you trust who isn't a gay parent or adoptive parent and hearing their experiences. So we found Choice Network because of our friends, Jim and Derek. They went through the Choice Network to adopt their son, Owen, and hearing their experience with Molly and Molly's team is what sold us on using Choice Network. And I think there's so many same-sex families here in Columbus, but across the country, so finding friends or just someone you trust and hearing their experience is extremely helpful, because what better way to confirm that an agency is LGBTQ friendly and, does an amazing job than hearing it from somebody that or somebody who's gone through it.
So I know sort of organization might be a little different, but maybe at high levels, what is the matching process like? So now that you started the process, like, great, I found my agency, I found, like, how does match happen on a sort of high level?
Yeah.
Space?
I can answer that, but I also think that they can too. I mean, it's all birth parent driven. So what happens normally typically is that pregnant people are shown profiles of waiting families. We show our entire list of waiting families, which is normally around 25 waiting families. Other agencies have anywhere from 100 to 150 waiting families. It's also something, to pay attention to, is how many other families on their wait list, and then also how much they are planning to expand. Because we had a family that started with the agency, they only had 50 waiting families, and then within 12 months they had 300 waiting families. Just deeply researching that is important, but yeah, it's birth parent driven process. They're choosing you. Your profile is really where it tells your story, but we like to tell the moms that we're working that we just want to bring our families alive for them. So our families are doing pictures, but they're also doing videos, and honestly, the videos are really what attract them the most. But then I don't know if you guys have anything you want to add.
Ours, we don't know as much about the matching process with hearings. It was also fast and the Kamari. It's a really cute story because her birth mom found out very late in the game that she was pregnant. I think we got picked and matched about 25 days before she was born. That's when they had just found out. And they found Choice and said, okay, we want to work with Choice. And then her birth mom and her birth grandma went in separate rooms on their computers and said, we're going to go through the families. And they came back together and they both said, we picked the family, and it was us. They had both separately picked us. And I think that night we jumped on a Zoom with them because, of course, pandemic. So we jumped on a Zoom with their family and we talked, and it was like an immediate yes. Like we just mesh. We just everything was, great. And so that was how that match worked. And we kind of talked through those 20 days or so. We talked back and forth, and then when she was born here in town at Grant Hospital, and when her birth mom went into labor, birth grandma called us and said, hey, meet us in the hospital. So we dropped him off at his grandparents' house, and we went to the hospital, and just like Craig's story, they put us in a hospital room right across the hall from the birth family. And we spent the next 2 or 3 days just taking her back and forth, having her, she was obviously, her birth family said, we get the decisions on everything medical and all that stuff, but we would take her back and forth and so she could be with them as well. And yeah, So,
Yeah, I think they pick you and then they pick you over and over and over and over again. Yes.
Yeah, I think what was surprising for us was how informal the match process was. I think we were, I don't know, expecting some sort of like, I don't want to say like signing something, but we went, I mentioned our first meeting with Charlotte, Joel and I drove up to her first OB appointment, and we were in the waiting room with her, talking to her and her mom. We went back and saw the ultrasound, and we had a great conversation. And I remember texting the person on Molly's team who was with us and asking, okay, when do we find out if she picked us? And she said, oh, I'm sorry if we didn't make it clear. She's already picked you. And she saw your profile. She loves you both. It feels like it would be a great match. And then from that point on, we went up to Michigan. We had dinner with her and her mom. She had a list of questions to ask us in that initial dinner get together. Then we went with her and her family to the Toledo Zoo, to all these little excursions. There's a Christmas festival up in her hometown we went to. And to Molly's point, it solidified the relationship that we had with her. And so by the time it was time for her to give birth, we had such a great, they're really part of our family, and we feel like we're part of their family. So we had that dynamic. And I remember, you kind of have this fear as going through the adoption process that the mother is going to change her mind, or something's going to happen that's going to have this dynamic fall apart. And there was one moment where we're in the hospital room side by side in separate rooms after Izzy was born, and Charlotte's mom comes in and says, hey, Charlotte's having a really tough time emotionally right now. She wants to talk to you. And we're, our hearts racing. We're thinking this is where she changes her mind. And because of the relationship we had built with her and that close family friendship that we had built, Charlotte was actually feeling really anxious that we were worried that she was going to change her mind. And she was very, empathetic and cognizant of how we were feeling in that moment. And so she pulled us in and she said, I just want you to know, I'm feeling really anxious that you're worried about me. This is going to be a dynamic and a family connection that we're going to have for the rest of their lives. And I'm so lucky and fortunate to have you both. And of course, we felt the same way. And so it was just, it's really special that we had that opportunity to build that dynamic through the matching process, because it's been so great for us as parents, and it's been great for Isabella too, to get to know who her mom is and her family, on that side of the adoption process. So the matching process can be short, it can be long, but it is, I feel like it's just unique to each family as well.
I think, like we said, there's 100 waiting families to every one baby available for adoption. Only 1% of pregnant people are choosing adoption. So we always say there's all these myths out there, like birth moms are someone to be, fearful of, they'll take advantage of people, because, there are people who act because there is so many waiting families. There's a huge opportunity for people who are not birth moms to take advantage of waiting families. But we always say, when you're sitting across from that person who chose you, all of your fears fall away. And suddenly they're just this human who chose you, and you are instantly drawn to them. So it's just like you said, there's no contract to sign in those moments. None of that. Is just about loving her and loving her really well.
I have a question for the panel. Sorry to interject here. I wanted to know from the panel's experiences, I know most of you guys are in a couple relationships. How often have you seen any noticeable difference between single people looking to adopt? The whole process is birth parent driven, it sounds like. Do you see that people looking to put children up for adoption have any sort of reluctance for single parents or anything like that? Any tips that you've heard from people you've worked with who've gone through that process?
Well, I can answer that. I think Brian could too, but and Paige, but no. I think that any myths that say those are just myths. I think that pregnant people want non-traditional families today. They want families who are open and loving and who have built community their entire life, because that's what they're looking to build with you. So if you talk to an agency that they say single parents are chosen at less rate, they're just the wrong agency. I don't believe that there's any research that shows that. There's just myths out there that overtake the conversation.
Yeah, I agree completely. And I was just going to add to what Craig said earlier, which is very important. And I should mention it as well, which is it is critically important to talk to other people who've gone through the process first, which is what part of the reason GWK Academy, we have a mentorship program. So you'd be matched with a single dad through adoption who's gone through this experience within the last 2 to 3 years. But I can tell you, I've talked to the last 4 people who've enrolled in GWK Academy have all been single men. 3 for adoption and 1 for surrogacy and IVF. There are a ton of single gay men out there who are saying, I'm not waiting for Mr. Right. I'm going to do this right now.
I agree wholeheartedly.
Your profile that you write about yourself is gonna be you're selling yourself, kind of. You're talking about your best qualities. You're talking about, you know, if you have family around you, if you have chosen family around you, those are the things you want to put in your profile, because somebody who is looking for, like Molly said, that non-traditional family is going to look for somebody who says, I'm here for this. I'm choosing adoption because, or whatever you choose, but I'm choosing adoption because that's how I want to build my family. I'm choosing this because I want to give all the love I have to this child. So really that profile that you build of yourself is how you're selling yourself. So writing that in the right way, writing about yourself. Don't be afraid to talk about your very best qualities. You're not bragging. You're showing the best that you have to give to this baby and to this birth mother as well. Okay.
Do you work with a lot of non-infant adoptions or any like 1 or 2-year-old?
So I know that the foster care panel did talk about, you know, having characteristics of like 1 or 2. I think, you know, I don't know if the world has changed at all, like post-pandemic, but usually 1 to 2 is a really hard range, because either pregnant people are choosing adoption at the hospital, because once they take a baby home, it's a much harder decision to make. So then if it isn't working in the foster care system that's in, then there's going to be anywhere, depending on the state. Ohio, it's 2 years of reunification, trying to get the mom to be able to reunify with the baby. So even the average age of kids available in the foster care system is age 9. So when families say they want like age 1 to 2, I just think it's a little bit of a unicorn situation. I mean, it can definitely happen. I mean, I think it's your story. It can happen in the foster care system. And there are times, I mean, we have placed a 3-year-old through the foster care system. That's through our connections. We actually, like, probably both of their home studies were, you know, for age like up to age 12. You know, many of our families, we just make it as broad as possible, so that if a situation does come up, we can still present and still connect and help and support that family, the family who's looking to place for adoption. So I would say infant adoption is not the place you would go to for that, though. I think you would be going to the foster care system, which is a beautiful place to start to build your family. But I think you would be starting there if that's the age range you are hoping for. But also knowing that you're going to be hearing pretty quickly that it's going to be older, but it can still happen. I mean, I think we had 2 or 3 panelists tell their story of adopting infants through the foster care system, or 1 to 2-year-olds.
So being mindful of time, to make sure that we have any other questions that we'd like to get answered before we wrap up.
I think you also mentioned cost and I missed it. What's the average cost?
$45,000.
Molly, can I just talk about Becky Fawcett's organization for a second?
Sure.
So, for anyone going through the adoption process, there's an organization called helpusadopt.org. It's run by a woman named Becky Fawcett, whom I love as much as I love Molly. She is a real ally of the LGBTQ plus community. They give grants up to $20,000, and they do a rolling admissions. I forget if it's 3 times a year or 4 times a year. Actually,
6 times a year.
Okay, and November 1st, I believe, is their next deadline. But they are looking, they'll give preference to members of the LGBTQ plus community seeking grants. So I cannot encourage people strongly enough to go to helpusadopt.org and apply for a grant from them if you need one.
They are projected to give $1 million this year in grants. They are the only organization that I'm aware of that supports all families pursuing adoption. They also do 6 cycles a year, which is incredible because in the adoption world, you do have to apply in a certain window or time frame. Oh, please apply because it's so easy to, when you fill out the application on their website, it holds it on the site. You can come back to it. You can upload documents to their site. It's one of the easiest I think, to apply to.
There's also a federal adoption tax credit as well to help
Oh,
offset
yes.
the costs. So I think it's 14,000. It's a refundable tax credit to my knowledge, but that was extremely helpful for us when we were adopting because obviously there is that sticker shock of the cost of it, and to have that tax credit come back to us was extremely helpful. And Ohio has a tax credit as well at the state level. 10,000, yeah, up to 10,000. So we were able to get a good portion of the money that we had to pay in adoption fees, et cetera, back to us through those tax credits.
Thank you for that. Happy and great.
So as we wrap up, I just want to start up again by saying thank you all so much for taking the time out of your day, busy day. Those of you who have kids present with you, thank you for bringing the little ones as well. You know, I think the great thing is we've not realized about adoption, just like everything else that we've sort of touched on today, is that there should be a great level of intentional thought that goes through this process before you jump into it. And realizing that it is, as we've always or alluded to throughout everything else, it is an exploration process of self, but also those who are around you to be able to support you in that process. So take the time to be thoughtful and inclusionary as you consider who and what organizations you want to work with, but how they also want to work with you. And I think as we also have learned, there's still an economic investment that we need to consider. So as you're considering your pathway options, you know, think about what your ability is to finance and be part of this process. And I think finally, you know, as we're thinking about the pathway to adoption, we realize that just like other pathways to parenthood, you are still creating deep and meaningful relationships with the young person that you're bringing into your life. So, thank you all so much again for taking the time. Thank you to Wisconsin, New York, and Vermont for being with us. I will decidedly say that this is probably the furthest our panels have reached. Even last year we were all virtual. So it's exciting to have representation wherever you are today. So thank you all again so much for being a part of this, and we look forward to continuing our meeting with you all. So thank you all so much, and we'll start the next session.